Prasa has been one of the biggest victims of state capture, with hundreds of millions of rands wasted, lost due to fraud, mismanagement, vandalism and outright economic sabotage, often with little or no consequence. So, can the new board chair, Leonard Ramatlakane, turn the mess around? That is the big question, and of course he has taken the time to join me in the studio. Mr. Ramatlakane, good afternoon. Welcome to The Fix. Now, before I go on my set amount of questions, I was reading the papers earlier and reading the story that Lucky Montana, who was of course at Prasa before, spoke about the extent of the pressure that Prasa came under from different ruling party and governing party members to provide services and facilities for governing party activities, from rallies, etc. Have you put a stop to this as board chair?
Well, of course, good afternoon, and of course to the viewer, Skarima. Well, we are hard at work. I can tell you that the leak is stopping. There's nothing going on now. We arrived there now a month ago, and no looting is taking place under our watch. No looting will take place.
Why must we believe you? What have you put in place to stop the looting? If someone from the Youth League phone you up, like Pule Mabe phoned up Mr. Montana and demanded that trains be laid on for, people to come to their centenary celebrations or whatever it is that they're having, how do we know that no one at Prasa is going to fall victim to that kind of intimidation?
Well, I can say to you, watch the space. We are there. Let's come back again in a year and ask me that question.
Okay, so let's start with the vandalism. You know, my producer and I were talking when we were preparing for the show. If you look at the goods of Prasa that have been vandalized, you're talking about the railroad tracks, you're talking about coaches. If somebody steals that, it has to go on a van, it has to go somewhere. Are they selling the stuff, wholesale? Are they smelting it down? Do you have any grip on how to deal with the vandalism? But more importantly, I mean, it can't be that hard to track these things, because these are massive pieces of infrastructure that you can't just hide anywhere. And I mean, the extent to which it's been vandalized, it shows you that organized crime, organized syndicates must be involved.
Obviously, this is not part of organized crime. It's people who knows what they want and where they want to take that to. In fact, they're selling their stuff. In Cape Town last week, we were doing the very walkabout, looking at the station. And the Prasa security arrested 6 guys with the cable. They have just burned the cable. They were about to go to a scrapyard to go and sell it. So there are a couple of problems that we'll have to deal with, which is not only Prasa that we'll have to work with. We're working together with the police. We're working together with other agencies of state, because we have to close down
Absolutely.
some of those scrapyards.
But here's the thing.
Only to collect the scrap as a business.
Absolutely. But I mean, the point that Mr. Pillay made about the value chain, that you can't just fix one. The criminal justice system is an entire value chain. The Minister of Police said it himself. If you have corrupt police, you have corrupt prosecutors, you have corrupt prisons officials, then that system works with the syndicate. And the truth is they've got enormous influence and power there. What kind of assistance are you getting from the criminal justice system value chain to make the plans that you have at Prasa work? Because if they don't cooperate with you, then your plans will come to naught. I mean, that is the difficulty with every big state entity where massive industrial scale corruption has taken place.
Well, there's a MOU that has been signed between the police and Prasa,
okay,
including to make sure that there is a collaboration and integration. So we hope that MOU, of course, it needs to be strengthened from time to time, where the police are going to do they're going to perform a particular job, whilst the Prasa security is going to perform a particular task in terms of integration. Because remember, the people who goes to court is the police.
Yeah.
So they're working together with the Prasa security, and we continuously, on a continuous basis, engaging the police to say there's a shortfall here, shortfall here. Obviously, we need to have more security as well from Prasa. That is why the minister spoke about the 3,100 bodies, warm body that must be employed by the 1st of December. And we added that to make sure there's a visibility in terms of making sure that the asset of Prasa is looked after is control.
Now, on that, when the minister did that, he got into a Twitter war with MKVA because they were insisting that some of those contracts go to them. He then said that contracts can't just go willy-nilly to people, they must have the capacity and so on. As board chair, what are you going to do to stop the patronage that has been there before in Prasa, that Mr. Montana has been speaking about, and others, where these state institutions like Prasa was literally a piggy bank for leading figures in the African National Congress? The MKVA, people that want to bid, if there's companies, how are you going to make sure that they have the capacity if that you are to hire them? Because the minister also said that they were in fact the people who guarded Prasa before, and we had the kind of vandalism and the kind of theft that was there. So how are you going to make sure that the people you hire are fit for purpose and not fit for the pockets of certain connected individuals linked to structures like MKVA or the African National Congress?
Well, we're not going to look for color of people who need to provide us a service or what their names are. What we want, what we're interested in is people with capacity, people who are going to be able to go through a rigorous process, including the vetting process, to make sure that people that are being hired are people that are going to be fit for purpose. I'm borrowing your term, fit for purpose, that are qualified to do what they are going to be applying for. As we speak today, there are a number of people who are going through the process of being vetted for them to be able to go as part of this 3,100. So we're going through a process. The book is there. They have to comply with the PCERA requirements if they are in the security field, and we are sticking to that because that's what will give us results.
Okay, let's come to the issue around commuter corridors, particularly here in Gauteng. When can commuters expect lines to be restored?
Just on that, Karima, we've been doing lots of visits of the Gauteng lines, and we have seen the extent of the damage. The damage is huge of what has happened during these 9 months when there were no trains. People has just gone and helped themselves with the state infrastructure. So they have damaged the rail line, they've damaged the overhead lines, so you can't have a train running on the rail.
Have you asked yourself as board chair who benefits if Prasa's commuter corridors are not functioning? Who stands to gain from the destruction of this infrastructure?
Your guess is good as mine.
Well, I would proffer an answer and say the taxi industry.
Well, if you're saying that, obviously, if the
if you ask commuters, they will say they are happy that some of the train lines, particularly in Pretoria, has been restored because it's cheaper, because the taxis have put up their prices, and a lot of people are saying people are being forced off trains into taxis. Have you looked at that as a proposition?
Taxis are there to provide their own business. They are there as legal operators, and they have license to operate in their space. Obviously, if trains is not moving, people are not going to be waiting at a station where there's no train. They will move and take a taxi which is nearby.
Those who can afford.
Those who can afford. Obviously, the cost of that particular transport versus view of a train is expensive. More than 10% of South Africans spend their salary on transport.
Yes.
So that's heavy. So that's why we're saying our core function as Prasa, as a board, is to focus on making sure that trains are there and trains are run. This is a public transport that is required by millions of working class that do not necessarily have enough money, that depend on it. So we have a single focus of making sure that we go and perform that particular function, make sure that trains come back. Coming back to your question about corridors. As we speak today, there are about 15 corridors that are gradually being opened in terms of phases.
Okay.
There's a phased approach that has been taken. Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3. We're now at Phase 3. And now there's 15 altogether. Now you'll see most of those corridors, there is a diesel locomotive that is running, because the overheads line is damaged.
Yeah.
So we have to fix the Hoover line in order to get back into the normal electric motor. Electric motor would mean that we'll have more and more and more. So gradually we'll see more trains coming. There are lesser trains now because of the infrastructure. You have to test it. You have to make sure that safety first, not rushing to put in train while you are not sure about safety. There's a huge collaboration between Prasa and Transnet to make sure that we are able to move with speed to providing this service. Now, next week, while we're on phase 3, you've seen that Shosholoza Mail started running. So we're going, that's phase 3 where we are. We're going to start rolling out the Shosholoza Mail in other regions as well, Cape Town, Johannesburg, and so on, Durban. Last week there was an unveiling or resumptions of that particular line. So gradually we are getting back into business, but as we do that, we'll make sure that we have closed all the gaps. Where with the security issue, there must be a security for both passengers and, of course, an infrastructure when they get into that particular space. So gradually we are getting there.
Final question. Your revenues have been in really sharp decline, and obviously you need to become profitable. What is the one thing that you need to get yourselves right to turn profitable in Prasa, or is that also going to be a long, drawn, phased-out process?
Well, with our core function, within our core function, the most important thing is that we need to get people on trains, and we need people to pay their fares. At the moment, as we went down, it was like less than 15% people paying that their fares. So we need to increase that in order to be able so that we generate income in order for us to be able to plow back the money. That's very important. And other functions that we have in terms of property, making our stations more profitable, by engaging with the developers that are able to develop, to create a small hubs, economic hubs, in various stations where there is a volume of passenger going through.
All right, Mr. Ramatlakane, we've run out of time. Thank you so very much. There's, of course, lots to talk about with Prasa. I'm sure we'll have the board chair here again for an update just on how Prasa is progressing. Well, you've had your fix for the week. Join me again next Sunday. Thank you so much for watching.